No one expected a 9-year-old to steal the spotlight, but that's exactly what Princess Charlotte did. What began as a modest royal appearance quickly turned into one of the most unforgettable moments in recent royal memory. All eyes were on the young princess as she stepped up, nerves well hidden behind a calm expression, and delivered a speech that left the audience speechless and then on their feet. What made her words so powerful? How did someone so young carry such weight? And what does this say about the future of the monarchy? Today, we're diving deep into the story behind the speech. It started like any other royal event: an elegant hall, carefully selected guests, and a perfectly timed entrance. Prince William stood at the podium, ready to deliver what many thought would be a formal speech filled with ceremonial pleasantries and respectful acknowledgments. But as the cameras rolled and the audience settled in, it quickly became clear this was not going to be a routine moment in the royal calendar. Instead of starting with tradition, Prince William cut right through it. "We are not here just to honor the past," he said firmly. "We're here to look toward the future." The room shifted, eyebrows raised. There were no poetic tributes, no rehearsed stories of legacy, just a calm but firm voice introducing change. What he announced next sparked an unexpected ripple across the royal family. William revealed the formation of a new Royal Advisory Council, a move aimed at modernizing the monarchy's public role. Several senior royals were appointed to lead specific reforms. Princess Anne would focus on internal institutional integrity. Prince Edward was tasked with strengthening ties across the Commonwealth. And notably, Princess Catherine would be the face of youth, mental health, and education, two causes deeply aligned with her public work. The room received the updates with polite applause, but something felt incomplete. One name was absent from the announcement: Queen Camilla. As William continued, the absence became more noticeable. When the speech concluded, the atmosphere was tense. While William remained composed, behind the scenes, reactions were already forming. Queen Camilla, seated not far from the stage, appeared visibly shaken. Moments later, reports circulated that she had briefly lost consciousness backstage. Aides rushed to her side. Though officially described as a fainting spell caused by stress and exhaustion, royal watchers weren't convinced it was that simple. So, what exactly caused such a reaction? Sources close to the palace hinted that Camilla had not been consulted on the finer details of William's speech. For a queen consort already navigating complex dynamics within a modernizing monarchy, the oversight was more than a snub. It felt like a direct signal. It appeared to reinforce the idea that the future of the royal family would be shaped not around Charles and Camilla's reign, but through William and Catherine's vision. Insiders say Camilla had been working hard to establish her presence in the royal household, gradually earning public approval after years of being a controversial figure. Yet, in that moment, with the cameras flashing and the crowd applauding a vision she wasn't part of, it seemed her influence was quietly pushed aside. The situation was delicate. The palace issued no statement regarding Camilla's reaction, choosing instead to focus attention on the new advisory council. Royal aides were tight-lipped, but whispers quickly turned into headlines, with media outlets speculating about a royal rift and questioning whether this marked a significant turning point for the monarchy. Behind the grandeur of the event, this was more than just a passing moment. It signaled a transition, not just in leadership, but in direction. William wasn't simply speaking as the Prince of Wales. He was showing the world how he planned to lead, and that came with consequences. Queen Camilla, long accustomed to the shadow of controversy, now found herself facing another one. Only this time, it wasn't about public opinion, but about her standing within the family itself. The question hanging in the air: had she just witnessed the first major step toward her quiet exit from the royal stage? That's what made this moment so powerful. Not because it was dramatic or televised with fanfare, but because it was quiet, calculated, and deeply personal. The monarchy often survives through subtle shifts, gestures, appointments, silence. And in this case, silence was deafening, the kind that speaks volumes without anyone needing to say a word. Queen Camilla's fainting spell might have been brief, but the fallout was not. As medical staff escorted her to a private room, those closest to the royal family began to understand the deeper implications of what had just taken place. This wasn't simply about physical exhaustion or the stress of a royal event. It was about power, specifically a power shift that had now been made public. Within palace walls, Camilla's collapse was quietly referred to as a tipping point. While the official line suggested that she had simply not eaten enough or had been feeling under the weather, whispers inside Clarence House and Buckingham Palace painted a more layered picture. Aides and advisors began speaking in hushed tones about what they believed had really happened. Camilla had been blindsided. For months, possibly even longer, there had been talk among senior staffers that Prince William and Princess Catherine were beginning to assert more influence over key royal decisions. King Charles, though still very much active, had reportedly been delegating more responsibility to his son behind the scenes. Camilla, while still respected, was not part of every high-level conversation, particularly those dealing with the future shape of the monarchy. The Queen Consort had worked tirelessly over the years to reframe her public image. Once seen as the other woman, she had slowly earned favor through charitable work, steady appearances, and unwavering support for Charles. But inside the palace, her position remained complex. She held influence by virtue of her proximity to the king, not because she had been raised in royal tradition or because she was directly tied to the bloodline. That distinction, small as it may seem, mattered greatly. So when William stood before the nation and laid out a bold new vision for the monarchy, without mentioning Camilla once, it wasn't just symbolic. It was strategic, and Camilla knew it. Insiders say she felt humiliated. Not in the theatrical sense, but in the quiet, gut-wrenching way that hits when you're reminded, in front of everyone, just how temporary your influence really is. For all the years she'd spent crafting her role, for all the public appearances, state dinners, and private meetings, she had just been left out of the future. What followed in the days after her collapse was a wave of tension. Palace staff were instructed to remain discreet. The press was given minimal access, but the silence didn't stop speculation. In fact, it fueled it. Articles began surfacing in major outlets, with headlines hinting at royal fractures and an emerging divide within the firm. Royal watchers pointed out the body language between Camilla and Catherine at recent engagements. Photos were dissected, speeches analyzed, and subtle snubs catalogued with precision. The public narrative was forming. A quiet conflict was underway. Camilla didn't help her case by withdrawing from a series of scheduled appearances. Her absence, whether planned or not, was seen by many as confirmation that something had gone wrong. Meanwhile, Catherine continued with her duties, all smiles, all grace, making it clear who was now the stabilizing force in the royal narrative. Privately, the Queen Consort is said to have sought reassurance from King Charles. According to sources, she expressed disappointment at not being looped into William's speech or consulted about the appointments to the Royal Advisory Council. Charles, ever the diplomat, reportedly tried to smooth things over, but even he couldn't deny the growing reality. The torch was slowly, quietly being passed. The most telling part? There was no official correction, no attempt to publicly include Camilla in the updated vision, no statements from Clarence House to reaffirm her place. In the world of royal optics, silence is rarely accidental. It often signals a decision that's already been made. For Camilla, this marked a difficult realization. Her influence had a ceiling, and William had just walked past it. The British monarchy thrives on continuity, but it also thrives on control. Camilla's collapse wasn't just the result of fatigue or anxiety. It was a symptom of a deeper imbalance, one that had finally become visible to the public. As she recovered quietly behind palace doors, the future kept moving forward without her. And for the first time in years, the Queen Consort wasn't leading the narrative. She was reacting to it. And for a woman who had worked so long to rewrite her own story, That might have been the hardest truth to accept. While Queen Camilla quietly recovered, the eyes of the nation turned toward Princess Catherine, and what they saw was a leader stepping into her own. The day after Camilla's public collapse and William's transformative speech, Catherine resumed royal duties with her usual calm composure. No dramatic shifts, no statements, just steady, visible action. And that alone spoke volumes. It was clear to palace insiders and the watching public alike. The Princess of Wales wasn't just showing up, she was stepping up. In the past, Catherine had been known as a supporting figure, graceful, polite, present. But now, something had shifted. Her movements carried more weight, her presence at events drew more focus. When she visited a children's hospital the following week, the media coverage centered less on what she wore and more on what she said. When she hosted a private roundtable with mental health leaders at Kensington Palace, journalists noticed she was leading the discussion, not just attending. Internally, royal aides began to recognize the transition too. William had made his position clear with the public address. Now Catherine was making it felt behind palace walls. Her schedule was fuller, her influence on decisions more noticeable. Staff who had previously reported to Charles or Camilla now found themselves taking direction from Catherine or her team. Quietly, respectfully, but unmistakably, a new center of gravity was forming. Even her relationship with palace staff began to shift. Where she once played a softer, more ceremonial role, Catherine was now seen as decisive, asking the hard questions in meetings, requesting briefings on policy matters, and working closely with advisors on long-term planning. It wasn't a takeover, it was a transition, and one that many inside the institution seemed ready to embrace. Part of what made this moment so compelling was Catherine's restraint. She didn't gloat, she didn't distance herself from Camilla. She didn't publicly acknowledge the collapse or the questions surrounding it. Instead, she moved forward with focus and quiet authority, reinforcing her reputation as a stabilizing figure. That approach won her quiet allies, while some older courtiers remained loyal to Camilla and cautious about shifting dynamics. Younger palace staff increasingly looked to Catherine as the figure shaping the future. She was modern, approachable, and unshaken by drama. For a monarchy seeking relevance in the 21st century, those qualities weren't just refreshing, they were essential. Public sentiment followed. Headlines once dominated by speculation about internal royal friction now turned to admiration for Catherine's steady hand. "The crown's quiet force," read one tabloid. "Catherine steps into the spotlight with poise," another declared. Polling showed a spike in approval ratings for the Princess of Wales, especially among younger demographics. On social media, fans praised her diplomacy, her emotional intelligence, and her commitment to duty without ego. This wasn't lost on King Charles. According to insiders, the king expressed appreciation privately for Catherine's composed response to recent events. He reportedly held a private lunch with her at Clarence House, where the two discussed future engagements and planning. Though no public details emerged, the meeting was seen as a signal. The king understood who now had the trust of the public and the palace. As Catherine's role grew, her focus remained clear. She prioritized early childhood development, mental health awareness, and family support systems. She continued working with schools and charities, often away from the cameras. These weren't new causes, but under the current circumstances, they gained new significance. They showed her priorities, her values, and her vision. Behind closed doors, the Queen Consort was still regrouping. According to sources, Camilla felt sidelined, perhaps even betrayed. But there were no dramatic confrontations, no ultimatums, just silence. And that silence said everything. This wasn't a moment Catherine had chased. It was one she'd risen to meet. For years, the Princess of Wales had supported the monarchy with grace and patience. Now she was shaping it, not by force, but by example. And as Camilla faded, Catherine emerged, not as a rival, but as the future. And for a monarchy built on legacy and continuity, that kind of leadership isn't just rare. It's exactly what's needed. As the dust began to settle inside palace walls, the world outside was heating up. What had once been whispered in royal corridors was now splashed across newspaper covers, debated on morning talk shows, and trending across social media. The question wasn't just what happened, it was whose side are you on? Queen Camilla's fainting episode had raised eyebrows, but the silence that followed, both from her and the palace, only deepened the mystery. Meanwhile, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, was quickly becoming the face of calm, purpose-driven leadership, and the public took notice. Polls showed a dramatic shift in perception. While Queen Camilla's approval ratings dipped significantly, Catherine's soared. On social media platforms like X, formerly Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, hashtags like #Stand with Catherine, #Our Future Queen, and Grace Under Pressure began trending globally. Royal watchers who had once been divided in their opinions were now aligning themselves more firmly behind William and Catherine. One viral clip from a royal engagement captured the mood perfectly. It showed Catherine kneeling beside a young child at a community center, patiently tying their shoe while calmly answering a question from a local volunteer. The moment was humble, real, and exactly what the monarchy needed. Comments flooded in, "This is what leadership looks like. She doesn't need a crown to rule." Meanwhile, Camilla was nowhere to be seen. After years of carefully rebuilding her public image, the Queen Consort now found herself at the center of a controversy she hadn't addressed. That silence, intentional or not, created a vacuum that public opinion quickly filled. In the absence of a clear narrative from Camilla's side, old stories resurfaced. Memories of Diana, the affair, and the long, difficult path to public acceptance. Even though Camilla had earned respect in recent years, her collapse, and the symbolism people attached to it, brought those emotions flooding back. To many, it wasn't just about health, it was about power, and it was about guilt. Some commentators tried to offer balance, pointing out that Camilla had long supported King Charles and had taken on royal duties with commitment and dignity. But it was hard to counter the emotional resonance Catherine held with the public. Diana's legacy hung in the air, unspoken but potent. Many saw Catherine as the rightful inheritor of that legacy, not just as William's wife, but as a woman of grace, strength, and unshakable loyalty to her family. And when children are involved, the stakes feel even higher. Photos of Princess Charlotte, Prince George, and Prince Louis at recent public events, smiling, laughing, holding their mother's hand, became part of the wider narrative. Here was a family that looked united, grounded, future-focused. The contrast with the apparent division elsewhere in the royal household could not have been clearer. Publications around the world picked up the story. In the U.S., networks like CNN and ABC ran pieces analyzing the Catherine effect and its growing influence on the monarchy. European media praised her diplomacy and composure. Even typically reserved outlets in the UK, like The Times and The Telegraph, acknowledged a shift in public favor toward the Princess of Wales. Behind the scenes, palace aides were reportedly divided. Some longtime Camilla supporters felt she had been unfairly portrayed. Others believed it was simply the natural evolution of a younger generation stepping into the spotlight. What almost everyone agreed on was this: Catherine had captured the public imagination, and that was not something easily undone. William, too, saw his approval rise. His bold speech and clear restructuring of royal duties had struck a chord, especially with a population weary of pageantry and eager for purpose. Together, William and Catherine were now viewed not only as heirs, but as leaders. The palace, aware of the mood shift, began adjusting its communications. Future engagements featured more joint appearances by William and Catherine. Media briefings emphasized their projects, their impact, and their values. Camilla's appearances were more limited, quieter. There was no official statement, but the message was clear. The monarchy was moving forward, and it was doing so under new guidance. The country had picked a side, and it wasn't about choosing one woman over another. It was about choosing a vision, one rooted in tradition but open to change. A monarchy that listened, that evolved, that reflected the people it represented. In Catherine, many believed they saw that future. and with William beside her and the next generation just behind. Britain, for the first time in a long time, seemed hopeful about what came next. While the public stood firmly behind Princess Catherine and the next generation of the royal family, Queen Camilla quietly retreated from the center stage. The once confident consort, who had spent years carefully shaping her public image, now found herself under intense scrutiny and emotionally exhausted. According to insiders, Camilla's collapse was not just a moment of physical weakness. It was the culmination of mounting pressure, family tension, and growing isolation. The media frenzy that followed only deepened her sense of vulnerability. For a woman who had once battled to be accepted by the public, this latest chapter felt like a painful return to old battles she thought she had long left behind. In the weeks following her dramatic fainting episode, Queen Camilla drastically reduced her public appearances. Palace sources confirmed that several engagements were postponed or quietly reassigned. Those close to her described her demeanor as shaken, withdrawn, and reflective. Camilla, known for her resilience, was clearly wounded, not just by health concerns, but by the realization that public sentiment had shifted decisively away from her. Behind closed doors, her relationship with King Charles was said to be strained. Though he remained supportive in public and ensured her privacy was respected, the king was also grappling with the broader implications for the monarchy. The tide of popular opinion had turned in favor of William and Catherine, and the spotlight had firmly moved on. The Queen's silence left a gap that others quickly filled, with speculation, judgment, and shifting loyalties. Camilla's inner circle worked diligently to protect her from further fallout. Public relations advisors recommended a low profile, urging her to focus on smaller, less politically charged engagements. She continued her charity work, especially in areas of domestic violence and literacy, but did so away from the cameras. Even her body language changed. Gone was the confident posture, replaced by guarded smiles and a softer tone. Still, many wondered if the damage was already done. What hurt the most, insiders revealed, was the idea that Camilla's actions had been interpreted as self-serving or politically motivated. She had not expected the backlash over the heirlooms allegedly diverted from Princess Charlotte. To her, these had been family items, part of the royal collection to be used and shared, not necessarily reserved. The blowback took her by surprise. The public outrage, the commentary about overstepping, and the quiet distancing from other royals struck a deep emotional chord. Camilla had spent decades rebuilding her reputation, from being cast as the other woman to slowly gaining the queen consort title. She knew how to navigate difficult press, but this time was different. This wasn't just gossip or scandal. This was a narrative rooted in legacy, trust, and Diana's memory, an emotional battlefield she couldn't win on. Meanwhile, the press grew bolder in its coverage. Headlines asked pointed questions. Where is the Queen? Camilla steps back amid controversy, and Catherine commands support in palace shift. Royal commentators noted that the public was no longer willing to extend the same grace they had offered Camilla in the past. Photos from royal events showed the contrast more clearly than words ever could. While William and Catherine appeared confident, smiling, and surrounded by their children, Camilla was increasingly absent or featured only in background roles. Her once rising profile had all but vanished. Despite the tension, the king reportedly tried to maintain balance within the family. Sources say he held private talks with both Catherine and Camilla, attempting to soothe the friction and restore unity. But even Charles could not ignore the reality. The public's loyalty had shifted. The future clearly belonged to the younger royals, and any effort to push against that tide risked further alienation. Privately, Camilla began leaning more on her own children and grandchildren. Her bond with her granddaughter Lola remained strong, though sources say she made quiet efforts to clarify intentions behind the jewelry handovers. Whether it was an honest misunderstanding or a breach of protocol may never be fully known. But what mattered to the public and to Catherine was how the situation had been handled and whether lessons were learned. Ultimately, Camilla's retreat from the spotlight was not just about recovery. It was about reflection, about understanding that the modern monarchy demands not just tradition, but also transparency, respect for legacy, and emotional intelligence. For now, Queen Camilla remains in the background, still supportive of King Charles, still engaged in private duties, but aware that her influence has diminished. And in her place, a new royal image rises, one built on stability, service, and the quiet power of Princess Catherine. As Queen Camilla faded into the background, Princess Catherine stepped forward, not with fanfare, but with grace and quiet determination. She didn't hold press conferences. She didn't make public statements. She didn't need to. Her actions and her calm leadership spoke louder than any speech. The British public, still deeply connected to the memory of Princess Diana, saw in Catherine a kind of revival of the values that Diana had championed: compassion, dignity, and unwavering care for family. But Catherine was also her own woman, steady, strategic, and forward-looking. And in this moment of uncertainty for the royal family, her presence became the symbol of stability the monarchy needed. While the issue of the diverted heirlooms could have sparked a full-blown public feud, Catherine chose a different path. Instead of escalating tension, she worked quietly behind the scenes. Palace insiders say she was methodical. She consulted royal archivists. She spoke with her husband, Prince William, and reviewed the private records regarding inheritance. Over time, a clear pattern emerged. Items promised to Princess Charlotte had been reassigned without proper discussion. But rather than seek confrontation, Catherine approached the issue with diplomacy. She met with senior royal advisors and calmly presented her concerns. Her focus wasn't punishment, it was preservation. Preservation of tradition, preservation of her daughter's legacy, and preservation of unity within the monarchy. This strategy earned her quiet but widespread admiration inside Buckingham Palace. Staff members who had previously stayed neutral began offering information. Archivists helped restore original records, and, one by one, heirlooms were returned to their rightful place in Princess Charlotte's future collection. In public, Catherine continued to fulfill her duties with warmth and professionalism. She attended engagements with her children, supported charitable causes, and remained the face of modern royalty. But among those within royal circles, her influence had clearly grown. People had started referring to her not just as a royal consort, but as a leader in her own right. Prince William, too, stood firmly by her side. Always protective of his mother's memory and his children's future, William reportedly shared Catherine's concerns about the jewelry. Though typically reserved, he made his support known through his actions, quietly backing efforts to correct the records, ensuring Charlotte's inheritance was secured, and maintaining open communication with palace staff. The public, meanwhile, responded with increasing support for Catherine. Social media lit up with hashtags like One Protect Princess Charlotte and One Princess Catherine Strong. Videos and photos from Catherine's recent public appearances were flooded with praise. One image in particular made headlines: a close-up of Catherine wearing the emerald necklace once promised to Charlotte, originally worn by Princess Diana. It was a silent, symbolic reassurance that Charlotte's heritage was intact. Observers began noting a shift in tone across royal coverage. Headlines no longer focused on the Camilla controversy. They focused on Catherine's quiet leadership. Commentators referred to her as the People's Princess 2.0 and the true backbone of the modern monarchy. It was not a title she claimed, but one that she earned. Within the palace, this shift didn't go unnoticed. Courtiers started involving Catherine more directly in key decisions, especially those related to legacy, public image, and family planning. She was seen as someone who could navigate both tradition and modernity with sensitivity, someone who could be trusted with the monarchy's most delicate matters. One advisor reportedly remarked, "If William is the future king, Catherine is the future compass." Through it all, Catherine remained steady. Her goal had never been to seize power or win popularity. It was to protect what mattered most: her family, her children's legacy, and the values she believes should define the royal family in the 21st century. The ordeal, while difficult, ultimately solidified her role not just as a royal figure, but as a moral anchor within the House of Windsor. She reminded the public and the palace that influence doesn't always come from speaking the loudest. Sometimes it comes from listening, understanding, and leading with purpose. And as Queen Camilla stepped back, Catherine stepped forward, not in competition, but in quiet confidence. The future of the monarchy was not declared with royal proclamations. It was shown in moments like this. Catherine had proven herself not just as a mother and a consort, but as a guardian of legacy. And in doing so, she won the hearts of a new generation.